It was David, the shepherd boy, and his meditation as he watched the flock. When I consider thy heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and the stars, which thou hast ordained. What is man that thou art mindful of him, and the Son of Man that thou visitest him? For thou hast made him a little lower than the angels, and hast crowned him with glory and honor. That was written long time ago, when you and I were still there, probably. But things should change, shouldn't they? Isn't it true that everything moves in a spiral upward? And so we would not see God as David saw him, nor would we see ourselves as David saw him. So we have the great divine director come, trying to encourage us to take another spiral upward. For so many times, we catch ourselves in the Old Testament concepts. Oh God, please bless me. Oh God, God up there, blessing me here. This is duality. The great divine director starts out his dictation or his teaching with quite a startling expression. To you who are the created image, know thy Creator. Know him as thy true self. Know thyself in him, and thereby assume the robe of responsibility to multiply the loaves and fishes of life and to feed the multitudes, the living word. Now that's a bit different than what David wrote. We want to, in this month, learn to work the cloud. But we don't want to just keep it in the same consciousness that we have had for so long. We want to do the cloud as Saint Germain has suggested we do it. But to do so, we have to make a change in many ways of our spiritual reality. We can no longer see ourselves as separate from. We have to begin to see ourselves as the created image. To you who are the created image, know thy Creator. Know him as thy true self. We cannot see ourselves as something apart from. This keeps us separated. We have to begin to change and begin to see ourselves as God himself, or the Mother God herself. Our attitude about changing, working with life, must come from a different perspective. Turn it around. The power of God taken within you when you realize I am that God. And then, as he says, take and assume the robe of responsibility. For when you start moving from that direction, great things can happen. You don't even have to ask. If you have a will for something to happen, it happens. But the problem is our minds work like the television. We've watched the television and we've picked up. The television gives many, many pictures very, very fast, and it changes those pictures. And so our minds begin to do the same thing. When you sit down and go into meditation, when you sit down and go into meditation and try to hold a single image, can you do it? It's very difficult. Okay, so I sit down, I tune myself in, and the first thing I heard the chicken crow, and so I'm out. No, I'm trying to be here. Try to force yourself to hold an image, because creation comes from the image one holds. When one holds an image in your mind, that image is what is created. So if I send arrows of anger at you, I am creating an image. The closer I am to manifesting God himself, the more that image affects the person. They call it black magic. At the same time, if my image of you is of a lifting image, manifesting the Spirit of Almighty God, that is God moving through you to create the image. Every time you feel a will to do something, you have created an image. The more energy you put into that image, that's not going to be separated and cut up by our own feelings and thoughts and so on. But the purer the image, the more it happens. And so as we begin to work on the cloud, we have to start changing our approach, not from one who is wanting to do something, I want to create something. No, I now move from the vantage point of I am God in manifestation. Therefore, I will this. And what you will do is draw out from your I am presence, your causal body, which has been created by you over the thousands of incarnations that you have created, that you have lived. You have created good and bad. The good is in your causal body. And now in the cloud, we draw from that causal body energies, that which we want to create. It's very important to see. There's a difference between approach. And as we begin to work with this, so that by the end of this month, we will have some concepts within ourselves and understandings which can help us have precipitation beginning to happen. Look at what the masters have shown us. After Jesus showed us precipitation, not only healing, but life giving up. Also, they came to him, if you remember, and said, Master, we got to pay taxes. What can we do? What was his answer? Go take your fishing hooks and go down to the lake. And at that lake, you throw it in. The first fish you pick up, open its mouth, and there the coin will be for the taxes. Now, it doesn't have to be that difficult. If you read from the book Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East, where Jesus also was there, but one of the other masters had taken the writer of the book, and they went to a big banquet, huge banquet. The food had arrived. They were coming around collecting the cost of the banquet. The master leaned over and said to the writer, don't worry, I'll pay for it. But he didn't reach in his pocket to get a change purse. He didn't do anything except just sit there. And they communed. And when the hand came out for the payment, he just picked it up and picked up his hand and put the coins there. How'd he do it? This sounds like Saint Germain. This sounds like people like Rai Ernan, who his whole kingdom, he just provided the food for them. Tremendous understanding. When the neighbor king come over with his 2,000 soldiers, Rai Ernan didn't have any soldiers. He didn't need them. So he comes, the neighbor came rushing in with his soldiers, and Rai Ernan evidently, because of the mastership of his own being, he knew he was coming, and so he dressed as an old man walking down the road. And so the king, leading his 2,000 soldiers, said to him, "Hey, old man, show us where the king is. I've come to take over your kingdom." He got very impatient because Rai Ernan sort of teased him for a minute. And finally, Rai Ernan looked up to heaven, and then he said, put his hand like this, and 2,000 soldiers dropped dead. And then he raised them up, and they marched down, walked into the river, and floated down the river. That's precipitation. That's power. Are you any less than that? No way. We have all the possibilities. Why? Because we are part of God Himself. Our wills have that power behind us. That's why so many of us are in trouble, because our will is creating things that we don't want, that we worry and worry and worry and worry, and that is creating the vision that we're worrying about. Rather than being above that, and using that energy to create what we want. Saint Germain says, here's all this energy coming from your causal body, and you see it as spots, and you start burning those spots together to fulfill this image that you have. And that image then can do many things. He says, he teases us. He said, you can use the violet flame to cleanse your house if you want. We have to chuckle, cleansing your house with a violet flame. Well, read the life and teachings of the Masters of the Far East. You find out that they cleansed their clothes all the time that way. They were always tremendously clean. They wore a lot of white. They had a lot of dirt around. When the writer said something to the master, he just said, well, we just do this, and he cleansed his clothes right on him. You begin to see something here. Begin to understand that you are not just a little old sinner apart from. You have been drawn out. Like you take a bowl of dough and you take and put a pinch of it out and you make a cookie out of it. Well, you take a pinch of God. And when they were drawn out from God, there was at the same time a seraphim right there. And he has the job of walking with you throughout all of your lifetimes. We call it your guardian angel. And out of that wholeness of God, our job is to become again into that wholeness and that oneness. This is what we talk about in terms of purity, purifying oneself, purifying one's thought patterns. So what you are creating is what you want to create, not something that you are worried about or you're angry about or so on and so forth. It's a matter of understanding. You move from David's concept that God has made me and given me a little lower than the angels, that same blessing. Now we move up the spiral staircase and we move into that awareness, as he says here, to you who are the created image. Whose image? God's image. To you who are the created image, know thy Creator. Know him as thy true self. Know thyself in him, and thereby assume the robe of responsibility. Makes a difference when you understand that you are part of that divine reality that God is. And that when you think and you feel a thought, you are actually producing that thought. And the clearer you are, the more pure you are, the more power is moving through that will of God. The moment you have will, you have creation, you have image, you have thought process. It's a matter of understanding what the great divine director has been trying to share with us. It's a big thing to get around because we're so used to seeing ourselves as less than rather than more than. We used to be there, as he says on further in his teachings here. But the problem is man doesn't remember those high spiritual experiences when or before he moved into where he is now, the fall. Now we have to move around and see if we can get a hold of it. And this month we want to start working to make the cloud one of the great teachings of Saint Germain, which the masters have said, it's really too bad mankind has not taken that thing and worked with it. What happens if we do work it? What happens if we can create and precipitate? What happens if we don't have to have a bank for our money? Oh, whenever we have to buy something and so on, there it is. We bring it out of the causal body. As we begin to understand how this will change our whole way of thinking. That's the challenge we have that we're going to be working with this month. Not only precipitation, but vacuuming the negative out. And that's what we need in Washington, D.C. right now. We need a huge vacuum. If we can begin to catch on to the power that is ours, to understand who I am and how I can then begin to be the phenomenal self of God in manifestation. This, my dear friends, is what it is all about. I would like to just finish his last comments. He says, may I build a shrine to you, precious ones. May I adorn that shrine, circular in form, with bowers of beautiful flowers. Do you see it? Do you see it in your mind's eye? Do you have the image? He says, may I saturate the air with the fragrances of spring in the release of the sweet perfumes. May I receive above this shrine a low vault of blue, that thy hands may reach up and touch the gentle hands of the angelic hosts. May I come out at your feet. May I point out at your feet the little people, the elementals, who have served both body and needs of substance. May I hope that you will take your seat in the shrine of true selfhood. My daughter was just here. We had asked the elementals if they would fix the weather so that when they were here the 3 or 4 days, the sun would be shining and they could see the beauty of the area in which we live. Sure enough, when they were here, no rain. They even made the comment, we haven't seen it rain here, but everything was very green. On the day they got in the taxi to go home, it started to sprinkle. And then it rained. And then it rained very hard. Working with the elementals. Such a joy. Such a reality. So the shrine that the great divine director is offering to build around you, one of joy, the smell, the beauty, the feeling, the oneness. Do spend some time, day after day after day, to create what you really are, to actually cleanse all the other stuff, everything you worry about, everything you should not be thinking about. Just be the manifestation of Almighty God. He closes by saying, remember these words. Face to face with thyself shalt thou come, ere thy journey endeth home. Gratefully, I am the great divine director. No, we thank you. We thank you for your presence. We thank you for your work for us on the karmic board. We thank you for the message that we have received to reinforce that we truly, truly are God in manifestation. And now assist us in taking on the robe of responsibility to create truly what God would have us to create through thought and feeling. Grant us thy presence moment by moment and day by day, for we do ask it in your holy name, O great divine director. Amen.